Hello, Canada. Welcome back to another edition of the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, alias Tagai. Well, we've got a fair amount we are going to go over here today. First, the Pope has passed away at 7:35 this morning. I will play you the actual release from the Vatican. We're going to talk about the lineup outside of Bill Blair's riding. Move on to Ezra's surprise lawsuit. Carney getting caught lying again. CBC's hidden apology. And I'll show you where to find their apologies. And a few other stories with a little bit of a laugh at the end. Let's just start off with this. Pope's passing away. This is done in Latin. I will turn the volume down and read it off for you, for those of you who can't read the screen and who are on Spotify. Dear brothers and sisters, it is with profound sadness I must announce the death of our Holy Father, Francis. At 7:35 this morning, the Bishop of Rome, Francis, returned to the house of the Father. His entire life was dedicated to the service of the Lord and His Church. He taught us to live the values of the gospel with fidelity, courage, and universal love, especially in favor of the poorest and marginalized. With immense gratitude for his example of a true disciple of the Lord Jesus, we commend the soul of Pope Francis to the infinite merciful love of the Triune of God. A sad day for the devout, falling on a very special and religious holiday. Always hard starting episodes off with something so sad. Actually, even having any sadness in episodes is hard. But we must move on. So now, for the lineups around Bill Blair's riding. No, it is too long of a lineup to be for a Carney rally, and we know it can't be for Bill Blair. I don't think he has any fans. I don't think he ever really did. I think people just voted for him because they're liberal card holders. But the line is actually to the food bank. Yes, 25% of Canadians living in poverty. Actually, it's looking like that number has climbed to 27. I'm waiting for stats to catch up. Well over 2 million people visiting the food banks monthly. All-time record highs after a decade of destruction from the new post-national Liberal Party. Now, Ezra Levant is suing the Liberal Party. And no, believe it or not what you would think. In fact, this even caught me by surprise.
But while we wait to go back in, they're just having the police dogs sniff around for any danger. I want to tell you about something I did today that's got nothing to do with this debates. Guys, I sued the Liberal Party of Canada today. You can find the lawsuit at a special website I set up called lawbreakers.ca, because I allege in that lawsuit, and it's only 10 pages long, it's a very quick read, I allege that the Liberal Party broke the law and violated my rights. Now, this isn't some cockamamie scheme. They stole from me. I don't know if you saw about a week ago, there was something called Buttongate. Turns out some liberal dirty tricksters from the War Room went to a conservative conference and brought a bunch of sort of Trump paraphernalia and sort of pretended that it was conservative. What they were trying to do was make Pierre Poilievre look like a little mini MAGA guy, like a mini Trump. So they had all these pins and Trump stuff, and one of them were pins that said, little buttons that said, "Make Canada Great Again." And the idea was that, look at that, ha ha ha, Pierre Poilievre is just like Trump. But it wasn't any conservatives, and it certainly wasn't the Conservative Party. It was dirty tricksters from the Liberal war room. And I don't know if you remember, but Mark Carney was asked about this, and he pretty much confessed. But instead of firing these unethical folks, he just reassigned them. Did you see him say that?
Members of the Liberal war room, so the Central Campaign, distributed Stop the Steal buttons at a Conservative event. Given the anti-democratic implications of this phrase, how much does this event undermine the trust in the way that the Liberals operate? And what have you done in response to these revelations?
Thanks for the question. Look, this is totally unacceptable, to be absolutely clear. And I, on behalf of my campaign, I was unaware of this behavior, but on behalf of my campaign, I apologize for it unreservedly. Okay. I've made it absolutely clear to my campaign that this behavior or anything approximating it or in that spirit is unacceptable, cannot happen again.
Well, here's what they didn't think about when they did their dirty trick. Number one, I know from experience, if you publish campaign material and do not register with Elections Canada and have written on your stuff authorized by the Liberal Party, you're violating election law. It may not sound fair, but believe me, I went through it when I published my book, The Libranos. They chased me for years. And so I know if you're campaigning an election, you got to put authorized by so-and-so. But there's one more thing the Liberals did wrong. Make Canada great again? I don't know if you know that, but a few years ago, I trademarked that phrase. I had no idea that it would become a thing in the debate, but you can look it up. I registered the trademark to make Canada great again. And the Liberal dirty tricksters stole that from me. They stole my trademark without my permission. They made buttons without my permission, and they did it in violation of election law. Now, the thing is, Mark Carney could have taken responsibility and said this is wrong and fired them, but he didn't. He just reassigned them. Who knows what they're working on now? I'm suing because that's my property. Like it or not, I own Make Canada Great Again in Canada. They deliberately tried to confuse people to make it look like it was Pierre Poilievre or even me. I don't know. They violated election law. So I am suing them for violation of the trademark, and in the lawsuit, it's a very quick read, it's only 10 pages, for violating election law and trademark law. Go see for it yourself. Here's what's interesting. I've sued the Liberal Party of Canada, but I've also sued John Doe 1 and John Doe 2. Those are obviously not real names. Those are placeholder names until we find out who actually did it. Are you a little bit curious? Oh, I sure am.
Now, do you see the brilliance of what he's doing? He's not okay. No charges have been laid. The Liberal Party broke election laws. Our system's corrupt. They should have been charged. First of all, the two should have been fired. But Carney doesn't hold anybody to account because he knows his party's corrupt, especially when it comes to the Chinese infiltration in his party, which we're going to get on a little bit later, because guess what? There's more. He's forcing, first, because they used his licensed Make Canada Great Again. But he's doing it in order to force the law to do its job and charge the party for breaking election law. And second of all, he's doing what the media should have done, which is say the names of the two that we know of people that actually had these made up illegally in order to spread propaganda and misinformation. This is brilliant. This is chess at a high, high level. Well done, Ezra, as normal, fighting for transparency and freedom. Leave it to independent media, especially Ezra, to keep fighting endlessly and tirelessly. Make sure you support his platform. In fact, if you can, support all of our platforms to help get the news out. And you can start by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Moving on. A young Jewish couple got booted out of a Shoppers Drug Mart for being Jewish. This is Canada. Very sad.
So this just happened. I was at Shoppers on Bloor and Spadina, if you know where that is in Toronto, right? And I'm wearing my gold Star of David necklace. I'm not wearing it now, but my husband is wearing his Israel, like the State of Israel necklace. And the manager comes up to us, and the manager's name is Mohammed Buluba, something like that. And he literally says, "You're banned from this store." And I look at him and I'm like, "Why?" And he was like, "Because of your religion." And I was like, "Excuse me, you can't just ban somebody because of your religion." And I'm making a big scene. If you know me, I'm making a big scene. And I'm shocked. And my daughter has this like chocolate bunny in her hand. And my husband goes, "Put the bunny down, we're leaving." And I was like, "But I need my meds. Like, I need my medication." And so, I get my meds. And then like, I'm on the phone to like all these people, like the B'nai B'rith, like everybody. And they're like, "You need to switch to a Jewish pharmacy, and like, don't go there anymore, and keep yourself safe," and all this stuff. And like, I think what really gets me is the fact that like, this guy can sit there and say, "You're banned," and he was like literally like, "I'm gonna call the police." And like, we didn't want to start a scene, but I should have been like, "Fine, call the police then," but I didn't. And I think the whole thing is like really disgusting and shocking and terrible, and this has happened in the city of Toronto. So yeah, I think the most disappointing part was that my daughter left crying, and that like, I was pretty like shocked at the whole thing, clearly. And that is what happened, and like, I'm really like rattled about it and upset.
Post-national state, people. And now they're thinking about electing a Carney. We've already got a circus. We got 10 years to correct. This is just disgusting behavior. Now, an organization went there for her. They confronted the manager. The manager did pretty good. Apologize for the volume. I tried to crank this up as much as possible. You may want to put your ear to it if you want to hear it. I'm only going to play a little wee bit of it.
Is the individual here?
No.
Do you know when he'll be here? So we can chat with him?
I'm not sure. I'm not going to comment any further.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
But you have my word. I take it seriously. Okay?
Okay.
So,
My name is Mayor. This is Andrew.
pleasant meeting.
I hope that gets to the bottom of it. We don't have any.
You have my word. That
Excuse me.
I don't. I
Now,
appreciate
the manager did quite well. He obviously he was caught. He was caught with his pants down. He had no idea this was even happened. The nice thing about the world we live in now is these stores all have cameras in there. So again, this is all unconfirmed. I personally, I'm going to take the young lady's word, just because she seemed quite distraught, and you could see that she was suffering. And I think it was allergies or something. Because you're right, I was puffed up, and you could hear the asthma in her. And this is a sad state of affair. The police have to look into this. Not only does this man need to have his job taken away, he needs to be fired, and it needs to be recorded so any future employment understands they're bringing in an extremist, a hater. I don't want to say he's a Hamas supporter, because I really don't know. All I know is obviously he's got issues that need to be dealt with. The police need to charge him. And like I said, with the cameras, should be enough to confirm what happened. This is embarrassing. The state of Canada, we're letting all these people in unvetted, bringing all of this hate, and especially the extremist ideologies. We don't need this. That's un-Canadian. I don't care who you are. You have no right to ever discriminate or refuse anybody a service. It's just wrong. And I'm going to correct myself on how I said that, because there is a fine line. You can't ask somebody to create something for you. They have the right to not use their artistic abilities, like such as bakeries and things like that, where you're asking them to make something that goes against their beliefs. Because we do have this thing called the freedom of religion. You can always find another store, but you can never tell that person in that bakery that you're not going to give him a cake because of something that he is or she is. So there is a line that I believe can be crossed. And this is crossing the line. He has no right booting these people out because of who they are. That's wrong. They weren't asking him to grab and pray against his religion. That's not what they were asking. They were asking to be served meds, which is what this business does. So, yeah. Let me know how you think in the comments. Very sad. Moving on. Drea Humphrey. She got an apology, but not necessarily an apology. This is what CBC does, is they bury their apologies. Now, I'm a firm believer that if you're caught lying, if you're media and you're caught lying, whatever time you have spent passing that lie, you should give an equal amount of time clarifying and correcting it. So if you're saying the same thing over and over on every episode for, like, let's say 3.5 years, 4 years, you need that much time to repair the damage of spreading that lie. This is especially true when it comes to extreme cases, like where you're smearing a person's name without proof, purposely being biased against that person, and not giving if the person goes to trial and ends up being proven innocent, not giving that same amount of time back to that person to help them clear their name. And in this case, it's even more extreme because it has to deal with a huge lie perpetrated by the Liberal Party and Trudeau himself, with the whole genocide mass graves. Now I'm going to do an episode, and it may end up being a 2 or 3 part series on this. It dabbles with a little bit of my bloodline, and it really pisses me off. The government, once again, using their propaganda to spread fear, hate, and division. And the worst part is how all of the people who have no idea what really went on, all they're jumping on the bandwagon, passing these lies. Now, I'm going to say it straight out. There are zero, zilch, nada bodies found. None. Now, yes, we have graves that are unmarked. That is a far cry from finding mass graves and bodies. These are churches, people. Places of worship where they bury people. They are some of the oldest buildings and places established in Canada, which we have seen well over 200 of them burnt to the ground because of this propaganda that is being pushed by mainstream media and the Liberal Party and this idiot called Sellout Singh, pulling on the heartstrings of people with lies, absolute lies. Taken point. I'll use one school. Ochapaway. Yes, everybody knew there were graves there. They've known for generations, because there are not just natives buried there. There are people in the community from German, Hungarian, Swedish, Ukrainian, buried there, as well as nuns and even a few priests. They didn't have masons back then. There were no marble quarries. The headstones were usually made out of wood. And over time, the wood rotted. And due to the poverty, especially with the reserve in that area, the headstones deteriorated. Time has no mercy, even on a stone. The church itself had logs of where the bodies were and who they were. But even that, through generations, filing confusion, differences of church, of delegates, of priests, teachers moving in and out, and then the removal of the church itself from that area left a lot of confusion on who these bodies were, who they belonged to, etc. Dre Humphrey wanted to stop this narrative, this absolute lie. Now, I'm not saying that we won't find, we may very well find a murdered Indigenous child. We haven't to date. But they've allowed this to create so much fear that people's imaginations are in overdrive. I've even heard and seen respected individuals say, "Oh, that's why the incinerator was so big." Really? Give your head a shake. I don't know what those families went through, because I have heard and know of people who have gone, whose parents and grandparents had gone to these. And there's a huge difference between how they and my family and other families look back at those memories. Some are incredibly good memories. Some are thankful because it gave them an education. Others had it very rough. But the one thing that I think everybody agrees on is it was the loss of the language. That was huge. And the removal from the tribal traditions that came along with it, the storytelling that was our history, that disappeared. They didn't allow, as the education grew, in order for us to keep that language and put it into text. And it removed that, that was an abomination. That was a huge blow. Now, when you're coming from somebody like myself, you're dealing with 3 different languages that I know of that have been gone. Anyways, CBC wrote an apology. And as CBC does, because of the propaganda arm, they don't want to end this narrative. They need it, especially now during an election, because they need to keep the Liberals in power. So they're going to keep this murderers, crap, lies. CBC's Rosemary Barton called me a liar and pushed false unmarked grave claims on national television. Now the state broadcaster is quietly backpedaling from their misinformation used to vilify Rebel. Now, personally, they need to, on open air, in the morning before people go to work, at lunch, and in the evening news, give this lady and Rebel News a apology, as well as at least once every day during prime time, apologize to every single Canadian viewer for spreading the misinformation and lies of this so-called genocide that never happened. If it did, I wouldn't be here, nor would the millions of Indigenous we have all over Canada. We were actually very fortunate here in Canada. A far cry from what happened down south, which my lineage, after landing in Canada, fled from Quebec because of the persecution there, down to the States, only to hit the Great Walk, where we had to turn and flee back north into Canada. So we're quite fortunate as Canadians on our heritage. Not to say that wrongs weren't done. They were. But let's not blow this out of proportion. And let's get the government out of it, because every time they get involved, it just hurts the Indigenous that much more. It's colonization 2.0, called Trudeau, now Carney, the son of a residential school teacher. I will post this website on there, so any of you can click on it. I post everything in my descriptions. All the evidence, everything I use is down below, other than personal emails and certain people when they write to me, documentation, etc., etc. This is what they have on their website. Listen carefully to professional propaganda. You will find it under the corrections and clarifications. CBC News is committed to transparency and accountability to our audience whenever we need to correct or clarify our journalism. Corrections and clarifications are noted directly on all digital posts. But what happens if you make it on the airwaves? Oh, sorry. Propaganda. Updates that significantly change the audience's understanding of a report on any platform are logged on this page. So in other words, we bury it so you don't see it, because nobody knows that this page exists. Now I'm going to read to you the bullshit apology. April 17, 2025. On April 16th, during a live broadcast following the French language federal election leaders debate on CBC News Network, Chief Political Correspondent Rosemary Barton said, yes, there have been remains of Indigenous children found in various places across the country. Taken out of text, the way they wrote it. What several Indigenous communities across Canada have discovered on the sites of former residential schools are potential burial sites or unmarked graves. Propaganda. Rosemary is literally a liar. She is a full-fledged 100% liberal propaganda machine artist. And so is pretty much CBC and CTV and all the rest of the mainstream, because they've been keep pushing this narrative with zero evidence. Moving on to even more lies. Yes, I'm sinking in the polls. Bring up abortion. More lies, more fear, more hate, and more division. Now, Mark Carney is spreading, again, lies. Straight, blatant lies. Poilievre has said, and everybody knows, it's been 20 years since the Conservatives been against abortion. And even before that, there were already people within the party that wanted to be able to vote openly because they wanted women's rights. I believe in freedom of right and religion. You should have your own choice to do whatever you want. That should be no debate. But this guy, now, this was asked in French, and he didn't even try to answer it in English. Not like Poilievre, where Poilievre will always say, oh, and in English, they asked me this, and then he will give his answer in English. I will translate for you. So, You've accused Polyev of wanting to use the notwithstanding clause to go after the right to abortion, Carney says. Yes, Mr. Polyev explicitly said that he wouldn't, so why this accusation today? Carney, it's not an accusation, it's a fact. It's fact. He wants to ignore the Constitution of our country. Flat out lie. Fear, hate, and division. On to Ruby Dalla. Gotta love this. Ruby's a real liberal. She isn't part of the new liberal regime. She isn't this fascist party that it's become in the last 10 years. So all of those card holders, you should be burning your cards. You should have burnt them 5 years ago already, seeing what this Liberal Party has done to Canada. I'm going to read her quote off. It's beautiful. It's brilliant. Thank you very much, Ruby. I'm a fan. Ruby Dalla. Proof yet again that the Liberal leadership race was rigged and a setup. The establishment knew all along that Mark Carney was going to be coronated. They just wanted to get money for their Liberal coffers from hard-working Canadians, so they kept the entry fee at $350,000. Still waiting for its return. It's clear what you see is not what you get with Mark Carney. Taxpayers deserve better. Now, this is a clip I played on previous episodes. I'm going to play it again because it's good for you guys to see it and hear it. I'm going to read David Jacobs' quote. He says, "The narrative that Carney is an outsider and a change from Trudeau completely fell apart today. CBC just revealed that Carney's platform was written by Trudeau's team well before Carney even became the Liberal leader."
That's something I will say that has been ready for several weeks now. Mona Fortier was the one who was working on this, and it was ready before Mark Carney even became Liberal leader. So, he only had to tweak a couple of things. The Liberal platform, frankly, that's something I will say that has been ready for several weeks now. Mona Fortier was the one who was working on this, and it was ready before Mark Carney even became Liberal leader. So
let the truth prevail. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Get the word out. Now, the election task force, these guys are a joke. They call themselves the Site Committee, Security and Intelligent Threat to Elections. They had another expose this morning where they said that they're monitoring 6 relevant people. They only named one because they had to, since Sam Cooper and other independent journalists like myself have reported on this way before they did, that they're still campaigning to try and hush, silence, and stop the Conservatives from getting into power. China linked to fake wanted poster repression efforts against Conservative candidates. And there's a lot more to this than just that. The Chinese government is suspected of repressing the campaign of Toronto area Conservative candidate Zhou Tai, pushing a mock wanted poster for him online, and boosting disparaging stories about the Hong Kong democracy activist while suppressing searches of his name on social media. Yes, so in other words, even if you type the name in, they won't give it to you. They've deplatformed him. They've removed him. They've abolished him. And then what does come up is hateful rhetoric, because he wants what Canadians want, not like what the Liberal Party wants, what the Chinese Communist Party wants. The Chinese government is suspected of repressing the campaign of Toronto area Conservative candidate Zhou Tai. Sorry, I read that already. On Monday, Canada's Federal Elections Monitoring Task Force offered a sobering warning. The People's Republic of China appeared to be behind a transnational repression operation to undermine Tai, a Conservative candidate and a vocal critic of the Chinese regime. So transnational repression is a particularly egregious form of foreign interference because it is used to suppress free speech and democratic rights. Security and Intelligence Threat Selection Site Task Force woman Lori Ann Kempton said on Monday. Now, I urge you, if you're a new subscriber, watch previous episodes. I did an episode where I showed these people talking and then showed how our propaganda media literally worked for the Chinese government and did exactly what China wanted. It's an absolute disgrace. Instead of saying the truth that they were promoting Mark Carney and his candidates, they were saying, well, there were pros and there were negatives. There were no negatives. It was strictly pro-liberal. Moving on. There was another plane incident. I have no idea what is going on in the skies. It's getting out of hand.
Now to some breaking news out of Florida, where a plane carrying passengers caught fire at Orlando International Airport. Let's bring in CBS News correspondent Chanel Call, who's been following the story from our newsroom. Chanel, can you tell us what happened on the runway?
Well, some dramatic images to show you of this scene that was playing out at Orlando International Airport earlier today. The Federal Aviation Authority now says Delta Flight 1213's engine caught fire on the tarmac today, and then passengers, they were forced to actually evacuate the plane on emergency slides. The airline said flames were seen in the tailpipe of one of the plane's two main engines. That fire is now contained. It is now out. This plane, we should mention, is an Airbus 330. So, of course, a really big aircraft. It was set to fly from Orlando to Atlanta today. And you can see in this video what this scene looked like when those people were forced to exit through the emergency slide earlier today. There were 200 passengers on board. There were 10 flight attendants and 2 pilots on the aircraft. Luckily, no one was injured. In a statement, Delta says, quote, "We appreciate our customers' cooperation and apologize for the experience. Nothing is more important than safety, and Delta teams work to get our customers to their final destinations as soon as possible." Delta also is now saying that maintenance teams will examine that aircraft, and we know the FAA will also investigate exactly how this fire happened.
This is getting out of hand. Like, it's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy. And I'm going to show you one last funny. Found this, thought it was absolutely hilarious. Figured I would post it. Oh, I love people like this. Yeah, we need more of this in our lives. Oh, too funny. Well, you guys, I hope you enjoyed the episode. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And yeah, I always like seeing your comments. I love reading them. If you care to comment. And if you have subscribed, make sure you punch that notification bell so you don't miss any future episodes. Until the next time, you have been watching the Canadian Citizen Journal. I've been your host, alias Tagai. Stay informed.